This is the climax of Fight Club. The narrator aims a pistol at himself and pulls the trigger. The result is that the narrator is injured and Tyler Durden dies and vanishes. At first glance, you might have chalked this up to the narrator getting lucky while the bullet hit Tyler in a more fatal spot, but that isn't the case. Tyler Durden didn't die from a bullet wound. Tyler Durden vanished because the narrator no longer needed him. And I know that's probably a different take on what you thought happened, so we should probably start by considering why Tyler Durden even existed in the first place. And luckily, the film tells us why the narrator created Tyler.
Tyler, I don't understand this.
You were looking for a way to change your life. You could not do this on your own.
And so if we look back at the first act of Fight Club, we see the narrator living a mundane life. He's stuck in a job that bores him to death, living for nothing but meaningless consumerism and hating every day of it. He lacks the ability to change for the better, and therefore his mind created an imaginary friend to help him change. And that's where Tyler Durden comes in. He sees how people live their boring lives and is set on changing them. Let me give you 3 examples of how he does it. First, Tyler frees the narrator by blowing up his home so that he's no longer a mindless consumer. Second, he finds a random convenience store worker and forces him to pursue his passions of becoming a veterinarian. And third, for the grand finale of his plans, he's on a mission to destroy the financial system so everyone restarts at zero. So, we have this imaginary character and his whole existence is predicated on teaching the narrator how to change. But change isn't exactly a simple process. There are reasons why people choose not to change, and they all revolve around one thing: pain avoidance. See, when someone chooses to make a significant change in their life, it often involves leaving behind their comforts, enduring the discomfort of adapting to that new situation, and making sacrifices to earn the change. And that was what the narrator had to be willing to face if he was going to learn to change. He had to be willing to face his pain.
Without pain, without sacrifice, we would have nothing.
So Tyler gets to work on helping him face his fear of pain. He gives the narrator a chemical burn and only stops when the narrator begins to deal with his pain, not just ignore it.
Guided meditation worked for cancer. It could work for this.
Stay with the pain. Don't shut this out. No! Look at your hand. Stop it! This is your pain. This is your burning hand. It's right here.
I'm going to my cave. I'm going to my cave. I'm going to find my power animal.
No!
It's all about learning to face pain head on and eventually to even laugh at it. And then we come back to the climax with the narrator holding the gun to his own head, trying to stop Tyler Durden's plan. He says,
My eyes are open.
because the narrator is no longer hiding from the pain. He willingly brings it on, knowing full well it's coming because he knows it's required if he wants change. And remember, Tyler Durden only existed to help the narrator learn to change. And now that the narrator has proven to himself that he's willing to take on pain to allow for change, Tyler is no longer needed and therefore vanishes before he hits the ground. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because I don't want you to leave this video thinking that the narrator became like Tyler Durden and that solved all of his problems, because Tyler Durden is not the role model anyone should be following, and the film wants you to know that. Let's look at the narrator's character arc. In the beginning, we see him start on the side of trying to conserve his old way of life, and as the film progresses and he interacts more and more with Tyler, he begins to let go of some of his old ways. He becomes more like Tyler Durden, but it gets to the point where Tyler's ways, which are the ways of liberating yourself from the structure and the hierarchies you live within, go too far. The film is trying to tell us it's not just about change, but a measurement of risk and reward and changing for the better when it's worth it. Because the truth is, a blind commitment to change is just as bad as an extreme unwillingness to change anything at all. These are just 2 extremes on the opposite sides of a spectrum. And as the narrator finds himself surrounded by the results of extreme change, he shouts,
But this is too much. I don't want this.
By the end, the narrator distances himself from the extremes and finds a sweet spot in the middle, one that rejects the ideology of Tyler Durden, but one who is still willing to change when it's worth it. Fight Club implores you to find a balance between the 2 extremes. It isn't a coincidence that the film asks the question,
What kind of dining set defines me as a person?
right after showing us a table with the Yin Yang symbol on it, which is the symbol of a balance between the 2 extremes that the film is wrestling with. The narrator is subconsciously reaching out for a balance in his life, in this case by his consumeristic habits, which is why he also calls the Yin Yang table something clever that he just had to have. And he's right to want a balance. Too much conservatism leads to withering away, and too much liberation leads to chaos. The only thing that works, the only thing that survives the chaos and the withering away is a balance between the 2. And when his apartment explodes and the mundane life is thrown out the window, the only thing that survives the destruction of Tyler Durden is the Yin Yang table. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I think most of you knew this, at least on a subconscious level. I think we could all see that the man who ends the film is not the man at the beginning. He becomes a man who takes charge of his life and is willing to change for the better, all the while rejecting the extreme ideology of Tyler Durden. Even on a first viewing, if you didn't understand why Tyler died, you probably felt some catharsis when the story let him go, because we saw that the protagonist deserved some level of reward after going through such a difficult and meaningful character arc. And while knowing all of that subconsciously allows you to accept the ending where Tyler is removed from the story, I think it's best to know the truth that Tyler didn't die from the bullet. He was just no longer needed. If you enjoyed this video as I attempted to articulate the subconscious appreciation in film, I would recommend checking out other videos on this channel, subscribing, and if you really loved it, give it a thumbs up. It would mean a lot to me as a new channel, and thanks for stopping by.